Hello, welcome back to Radio Free IV. Today's video is going to be about vulgar socialism. I'm actually not sure how many, or if I mentioned that in any other videos as of yet, but the basic idea on my part behind vulgar socialism is that right now in the political context that we are in, it's very typical, or at least previously, it has been very typical for people with left-wing beliefs like myself to kind of moderate and kind of, play the game, so to speak, to do whatever they can to come off as less radical or to be more palatable, more acceptable by the mainstream. But there's an issue with that, which is that the mainstream is dead. It is not dying, it is dead. And one mistake that I do sort of fear socialists and left-wingers in general making in this new era is that we have a very small window of opportunity. I think we have great conditions for changing, the way that politics has gone on up till this point. I think we have a great opportunity coming up right now. I mean, this is the time to do it. However, to take over from the old way of doing things and introduce a new way of doing things, you can't wait. There's no adjustment period. There's no ratcheting up period. And so when it comes to why our current established form of politics, when it comes to how it gets so much power, one thing that we can't ignore, that we can't forget about, is the fact that when you have a conversation with somebody about politics and you talk to them about, for example, the government should be paying more for healthcare and making sure that people actually have healthcare, people have, by default, almost embedded within them, these reactions and these responses that say, no, well, because the government doesn't do anything well and yada, yada. These are the very, very small things that support this bigger ideology, the very small beliefs that exist within individuals. And I think this is actually a really underemphasized part of politics. And I think that, there's a whole reason for it that I am actually going to make a video about. But I think what we need to do as socialists, as people with left-wing values, is move into the space that these previous liberal myths occupied. We need to write the alternative, and we need to do so today, and we need to do so forcefully. The thing that really made me record this video today was a video or an interview that I watched with Mehdi Hasan and Tom Steyer. So if you don't know who Mehdi Hasan is, he is a British bloke, and I mean he's a cool guy. He's a pretty progressive individual, but he is rather a liberal. He is a very progressive liberal, but he is a part of the mainstream. He is embedded within these institutions, within the BBC previously or MSNBC after that. And as a result, he has this style that takes a lot of assumptions from the previous institutions. He's very antagonistic, very insistent on, critics say, for example, Graham Plattner, how do you respond to critics? He that's how he moves. And I respect it in many circumstances. However, we are now in a moment where instead of capitulating and explaining yourself through the lens that the mainstream has offered previously, we must offer an alternative. Now, the second, I think I mentioned this, I'm not sure, but, right behind me over here, big Steyer. I watched a Tom Steyer interview with Mehdi Hasan today, and I honestly saw a very similar dynamic where Mehdi Hasan is asking Tom Steyer lots of questions that if he was on CNN, I'd expect him to ask. And in that way, Mehdi Hasan is just being a good journalist. But the moment does not call simply for good journalism. The moment calls for a new approach, for a new way of doing things. So as a journalist, under this mainstream regime that we've had for the last 100 or so years, the goal has always been to be objective and to, hold truth to power and scrutinize, etc. But the way that I think that needs to be changed for these new conditions is through acknowledging and putting effort into building what people understand as the role of government, what people understand as, progressive policy that is possible. So with Mehdi Hasan's interview with Tom Steyer, the thing that I didn't really like about it was that Tom Steyer is clearly the most progressive candidate in the race. I mean, look at him over there, looking all cute. Looking all terrifying, actually. But Steyer is easily the most progressive candidate in the race. And one thing about Steyer that I love so much is that he just gets better. And he seems to get better, not because, he's spending so much money, so he just really wants to win. I think he's only improving. And the only thing that I find that's able to explain Tom Steyer's constant improvement and getting better at speaking and getting better at getting his message out there is that he gives a fuck. And so Mehdi, I think, should approach somebody who gives a fuck, not with this sort of, yes, but your critics say, and Mr. Steyer, as a billionaire, not that I'm saying that we should ignore those things, but I think there should be more focus on things like, for example, Tom, you say that you believe climate change is an existential crisis We agree with you, obviously, because that is what the facts of the matter state. So how do you approach not only building resilience for the climate change that we have been expecting for so long, but then innovating beyond that and preparing for the unintended consequences and the unexpected sorts of things that emerge just because of climate change? Those sorts of things. And actually, Tom Steyer did sort of get into this, where he talked about how part of his policy towards climate change includes using space to monitor fires so that we can have 24/7 surveillance and at least improve our government's ability to react to fires by always being aware of whether or when there are fires, which I think is a good policy. And I think what we need to do is to facilitate those sorts of answers as opposed to spending so much time entertaining establishment nonsense. Now, I think a person who really understands this is my GOAT, the GOAT, one of one, Mr. the one, the one and only, Kyle Kulinski. Now, Kyle Kulinski is a political commentator, and he's been doing this for quite some time. I think since 2008, 2012-ish, 2008, I believe, actually, is when he started. But recently, Kyle has, he's been undergoing a sort of transformation. The new Trump administration, as it has the tendency to do, is sort of driving him insane. And Kyle's been a lot more forceful in his rhetoric. And this picture itself actually comes from a Piers Morgan show where Kyle put on those shades and was just like, get off your knees, bro. Get Trump's dick out of your mouth. This is not political analysis, which is exactly how we should treat not just conservatives, but liberals as well. Because at the end of the day, what we need to recognize as socialists, as leftists, as progressives, any person who believes that we need to change this system, what we need to recognize is that the system is already dead. And so if we are going to be the inheritors of the system, and if we are going to build our own system, we cannot wait to start that work. And we cannot wait to start especially the intellectual work of getting our messages out there and getting our understandings of the world out there and using those as the tests for candidates, as the questions that we ask, as opposed to continuing to conform to the previous way of doing things. Now, I understand, everyone can't just adjust on the fly. And that's one of the reasons that I wanted to make this video myself, because I feel in many ways advantaged by the fact that I'm so young. Because the way that I grew up in the media, that I've grown up consuming, I am much more accustomed and prepared for this sort of media landscape than somebody even 10 years older than me, even 5 years older than me, but especially 20 years or 25 or 35 or 45 years older than me. And so that's really my point. We as socialists must not pre-compromise, must not pre-capitulate, and must not try to win over. We can't win the debate on the established terms. We must change the terms of the debate and win that one. So when it comes to single-payer healthcare, Tom Steyer is doing this, as a matter of fact, himself. He says, listen, it's not a question of do I think that we're going to get it and, we should move in that direction. No, we need this. This is the only way we're going to be financially solvent. We need to stop making stupid-ass decisions where we give rich people money just because they want it and inconvenience everyone else. Correct. Vulgar socialism. That's the method. That's the move. And if you ask me, that is the future. Thank you for watching. Please have a great rest of your day. And thank you for coming back to Radio Free IV.
I wanna be at the RNC. I wanna see Patricia McCloskey. I wanna scream for the GOP. I wanna sit with Dan Bongino. I wanna